Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring more heartwarming stories like this one. Quick question. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments and subscribe. Let's jump into the story. The emergency room doors burst open at 2:47 a.m., and Marcus Reynolds barely glanced up from his tablet. As the owner of Reynolds Medical Center, the largest private hospital network in Chicago, late-night disturbances were routine. But something about the commotion made him pause. A security guard was supporting a young woman who looked no older than 23, her face pale and streaked with tears, one hand clutching her swollen belly. "Please," she gasped, her voice breaking. "My baby, something's wrong. I don't have insurance. I don't have money, but please, don't let my baby die." Marcus stood immediately, his 6'2" frame commanding attention as he approached. His salt-and-pepper hair and sharp grey eyes had intimidated countless business rivals, but right now, those eyes softened with concern. "Get Dr. Patterson here immediately," he ordered a nearby nurse, "and prepare OR3. The young woman's legs buckled, and Marcus caught her before she hit the floor. "What's your name?" he asked gently, helping her into a wheelchair. "Sarah," she whispered, her green eyes meeting his with desperate hope. "Sarah Mitchell. I'm 7 months pregnant, and I've been having contractions for hours. The father, he left when he found out. My family disowned me. I have nowhere else to go." Something in Marcus's chest tightened painfully. At 52, he had everything money could buy, except the one thing he'd always wanted, a family. His ex-wife had left him 15 years ago, taking with her any hope of children. He'd buried himself in building his medical empire, but late at night the silence of his penthouse apartment echoed with emptiness. "You came to the right place," Marcus said firmly. "We're going to take care of you and your baby. I promise." Dr. Patricia Patterson arrived within minutes, her experienced eyes quickly assessing Sarah's condition. After a brief examination, she pulled Marcus aside, her expression grave. "She's in premature labor. The baby's in distress. We need to perform an emergency C-section, but there are complications. Without proper prenatal care, we're looking at significant risks for both mother and child." "Do whatever it takes," Marcus said without hesitation. "Money is not an issue. Save them both." As they wheeled Sarah toward the operating room, she reached out and grabbed Marcus's hand with surprising strength. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Marcus looked at her, and for the first time in years felt something crack in the walls he'd built around his heart. "Because everyone deserves a chance," he said quietly, "and because I know what it's like to feel alone." The surgery lasted 3 hours. Marcus paced the waiting room, unable to concentrate on anything else. When Dr. Patterson finally emerged, still in her surgical scrubs, he held his breath. "It's a girl," she announced with a tired smile. 4 pounds 2 ounces. She's small and will need to stay in the NICU for a while, but she's a fighter. Sarah is stable too, though weak. They both pulled through. Marcus felt an unfamiliar wetness on his cheeks and realized he was crying. "Can I see them?" Dr. Patterson hesitated. "Sarah's still unconscious from the anesthesia, but the baby. She's in the NICU if you'd like to see her." Marcus followed her through the sterile corridors until they reached the neonatal intensive care unit. Through the glass, he saw her, tiny, fragile, with a shock of dark hair and skin so translucent he could see the delicate blue veins beneath. She was connected to various monitors and tubes, but her little chest rose and fell steadily. "She's beautiful," Marcus whispered, pressing his palm against the glass. A nurse approached him. "Would you like to hold her? Skin-to-skin contact is beneficial for premature babies." Before he could think about it, Marcus found himself scrubbed and gowned, seated in a chair with this impossibly small human being placed against his bare chest. The baby's warmth seeped into him, and when her tiny fingers curled around his thumb, something fundamental shifted inside Marcus Reynolds. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "You're going to be just fine. I'm going to make sure of it." He didn't know it then, but in that moment his entire life's purpose had just changed. The empire he'd built, the wealth he'd accumulated, all of it suddenly had a new meaning. This child, and her young mother had just become his family, whether they knew it yet or not. When Sarah finally woke the next morning, Marcus was sitting beside her bed. She blinked in confusion, then panic flooded her features. "My baby! Where's my baby?" "She's perfect," Marcus assured her quickly, showing her a photo on his phone. The tiny infant swaddled in pink, a small knit cap on her head. "She's in the NICU, but she's strong. The doctors say she's responding well to treatment." Sarah's shoulders shook with sobs of relief. Thank you so much. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for this." Marcus pulled a chair closer to her bed. "Sarah, I have a proposition for you. Hear me out before you answer." He took a deep breath, knowing how this would sound but unable to stop himself. "I want to help you, really help you. I can provide you with a place to live, medical care, everything you and your daughter need. In exchange, I'd like to be part of her life. Not as a replacement for you, but as a father figure, perhaps, a guardian." Sarah stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Why would you do this for a complete stranger?" "Because I've spent 15 years building hospitals and saving lives from a distance," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I've never felt as alive as I did holding your daughter last night. I've always wanted to be a father, Sarah. Life didn't give me that chance the conventional way, but maybe this is my chance, our chance." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. Finally she spoke, her voice barely audible. "What's the catch? What do you really want?" "No catch," Marcus promised. "You remain her mother. All decisions go through you. I just want to be there, to help raise her, to give her every opportunity in life and to give you the support you deserve." What Marcus didn't see was the shadow that crossed Sarah's face, or the way her hand trembled as she wiped her tears. She had secrets, dark ones, that she'd buried deep. And the decision she was about to make would set in motion events that none of them could have predicted. But looking at this powerful man who had tears in his eyes at the thought of loving a child that wasn't his, Sarah made her choice. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." 3 months later, Marcus stood in the newly decorated nursery of his Gold Coast penthouse, watching Sarah rock baby Emma to sleep. The transformation in both their lives had been remarkable. Sarah had flourished under proper care and nutrition, her face filling out, her eyes regaining their sparkle. And Emma, the tiny preemie who had fought so hard for every breath, was now a healthy, chubby-cheeked infant with Marcus's grey eyes and her mother's rosebud mouth. Wait, Marcus's grey eyes? He'd noticed the similarity weeks ago, but dismissed it as coincidence. Lots of babies had grey eyes at first. They'd change, everyone said, but they hadn't. If anything, they'd become more distinctly the same shade as his own, that unusual pewter grey that ran in the Reynolds family. "She's asleep," Sarah whispered, gently placing Emma in her crib. The room was a masterpiece of soft pinks and whites, with hand-painted murals of fairy tales and a mobile of delicate butterflies that Marcus had commissioned from a famous artist. Nothing was too good for Emma. They tiptoed out, and Marcus led Sarah to the kitchen where he'd prepared dinner. Over the past months, they'd fallen into an easy routine. Marcus had converted one of his guest suites into a beautiful apartment for Sarah, complete with her own living space and bathroom. It gave her privacy while keeping them close enough to share parenting duties. "I got the results back from the specialist today," Sarah said as they ate. "Emma's completely healthy. No lasting effects from the premature birth. Dr. Patterson said it's almost miraculous." Marcus smiled, but there was something distant in his expression. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. "What is it?" "Emma's father. You've never told me anything about him. Not his name, not what he looked like, nothing. I've respected your privacy, but—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "People are starting to notice how much Emma looks like me. I need to know. Is there any possibility that he and I might be related somehow? Because the resemblance is uncanny." Sarah's face went white. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I can't talk about this right now." "Sarah, wait." But she was already gone, hurrying back to her suite. Marcus heard her door close firmly, and he sat alone in the kitchen, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. Something wasn't right. He'd built an empire on his instincts, and right now every instinct was screaming that Sarah was hiding something significant. The next morning, Marcus was awakened by frantic knocking. He opened his bedroom door to find Sarah standing there, Emma in her arms, both of them crying. "She won't stop crying," Sarah sobbed. "I've tried everything. So I think something's wrong." Marcus took Emma gently, and the baby immediately quieted, nuzzling into his chest. It had been happening more and more lately. Emma seemed to prefer him, reaching for him whenever he was near, calming instantly at the sound of his voice. Sarah had mentioned it bothered her, but Marcus had thought she was joking. "See?" Sarah said bitterly. "Even my own daughter prefers you. Maybe she knows somehow, maybe she can sense that I'm not." "Not what?" Marcus asked sharply. Sarah crumpled onto his couch, her face in her hands. "I'm not a good mother. I'm not good enough for her. You are. You should be her father, not just her guardian. You should adopt her." "Officially." Marcus sat beside her, Emma still content in his arms. "Sarah, what's going on? This isn't just about Emma preferring me sometimes. What aren't you telling me?" Sarah looked up, her eyes red and swollen. For a moment, Marcus thought she was going to tell him everything, but then she shook her head. "I'm just tired. Forget I said anything. I should go back to bed." But Marcus couldn't forget. Over the following weeks, he noticed more and more odd behaviors. Sarah would receive phone calls that she'd never answer in front of him. She'd disappear for hours, claiming she was visiting friends, but she'd come back looking stressed and afraid. And twice he'd seen a car parked outside the building, a dark sedan with tinted windows that drove away the moment he approached. Finally, Marcus did something he wasn't proud of. He hired a private investigator, a discreet former FBI agent named Jennifer Cole. "I need you to look into Sarah Mitchell's background," he told her. "Something's not adding up, and I need to know what it is, for Emma's sake." Jennifer's report arrived 2 weeks later, and what Marcus read made his blood run cold. Sarah Mitchell wasn't who she claimed to be. Her real name was Sarah Hendricks, and she'd been involved with a crime syndicate in Detroit before fleeing to Chicago. The father of her baby, a man named David Hendricks, who was currently in prison for embezzlement and fraud. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what Jennifer had uncovered about the night Sarah showed up at his hospital. It hadn't been random. She'd targeted him specifically, choosing his hospital because she'd researched him and knew he was wealthy and childless. The pregnancy complications might have been real, but the desperation, the story about being abandoned, it had all been carefully calculated. But why? What did Sarah want from him? The report didn't have those answers. Marcus sat in his study, the document trembling in his hands. Emma was 5 months old now. He'd been her father in every way that mattered for most of her life. He loved her with an intensity that frightened him, and now he had to face the possibility that he'd been manipulated from the very beginning. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Sarah stood in the doorway, and from the look on her face she knew. "You investigated me," she said flatly. "Yes," Marcus admitted. There was no point in lying. "Who are you really, Sarah? And what do you want from me?" Sarah walked into the room and closed the door behind her. When she turned to face him, there was something different in her expression. The vulnerable young woman he'd met in the emergency room was gone, replaced by someone harder, more calculating. "You want the truth? Fine. I'll give you the truth. But first, you need to know something about Emma. Something that changes everything." Marcus gripped the arms of his chair. "What about Emma?" Sarah's laugh was bitter. "David isn't her father, Marcus. He never was. I lied about that, just like I lied about so many things. But I'm not lying about this. Emma is special, and there are people who want her, dangerous people. That's why I came to you. I needed someone powerful enough to protect her, someone who would love her enough to fight for her." "Protect her from what?" Marcus demanded, his heart racing. "What have you gotten us into?" Before Sarah could answer, the sound of shattering glass erupted from the nursery. Both of them ran, Marcus's longer strides carrying him there first. The window was broken, cold November wind whipping through the room, and Emma's crib was empty. On the pillow where Emma's head had rested was a single note written in red ink. She belongs to us. We're taking back what's ours. The next 6 hours were the longest of Marcus's life. Police filled his penthouse, their radios crackling with urgent communications. Detective Ray Johnson, a grizzled veteran with kind eyes, took their statements while his team processed the crime scene. But Marcus could barely focus on the questions. His mind kept replaying the same moment, entering that nursery and seeing the empty crib. "Mr. Reynolds," Detective Johnson said gently, "I need you to concentrate. Sarah has just told us something significant, but we need to hear it from you too. Had you noticed anyone following you? Any threats? Anything unusual in the weeks before tonight?" Marcus thought of the dark sedan, the mysterious phone calls. "Yes," he said hoarsely. "But I didn't realize Emma was in danger. I should have done more. I should have—" "This isn't your fault," the detective interrupted, "but we need all the information you have. Sarah's told us about her connection to the Hendricks organization, but she claims there's more to the story. Something about Emma's biological father." Marcus turned to Sarah, who sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket despite the warmth of the room. She looked small and broken, nothing like the calculating woman who'd stood in his study hours earlier. "Tell them," he said. "Tell them everything." Sarah took a shaky breath. "Emma's father isn't David Hendricks. David was my boyfriend, yes, and he was involved in the organization, but I was unfaithful to him. I had an affair with someone else, someone connected to a rival family. When I got pregnant, I knew the baby wasn't David's. I tried to hide it, but David found out. He went crazy, said he'd kill me and the baby both." "So you ran?" Detective Johnson prompted. "I ran," Sarah confirmed, "but I knew David's people would find me eventually. They have resources, connections everywhere. I needed someone powerful enough to stand against them, someone who could protect my daughter. That's when I found out about Marcus Reynolds. Billionaire, no family, owns half the hospitals in Chicago. I researched everything about him. I knew he'd always wanted children. I knew he was kind, that he'd funded medical care for underprivileged kids. I gambled that if I showed up at his hospital, pregnant and desperate, he'd help me." Marcus felt sick. "So you manipulated me from the start?" "Yes," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "But then something happened that I didn't expect. You loved her, really loved her. Not because I tricked you into it, but because of who you are. And I saw Emma respond to you in ways she never responded to me. I realized I'd given her something I never had, a real father." "The affair," Detective Johnson interrupted. "Who was Emma's biological father? What family was he connected to?" Sarah's hands twisted in her lap. "His name was Michael Torino. He was killed 6 months ago in a gang shooting. But his family, the Torinos, they've been looking for me. They found out about Emma. They believe she's Michael's daughter, and in their world, family is everything. They want her to raise her in their organization, to groom her as the next generation." "How do you know it's them who took her?" Marcus asked, though dread filled his stomach. "The note," Sarah whispered, "taking back what's ours. That's their language, and there's something else, something I haven't told anyone." She looked directly at Marcus. 3 weeks ago, I received a message from Michael's mother, Sophia Torino. She said they'd had Michael's DNA tested against Emma's. She said Emma is definitely his daughter, and that they'd be coming for her. I thought I had more time. I thought—" Her voice broke and she dissolved into sobs. Marcus wanted to comfort her, but anger held him back. She'd known for 3 weeks that Emma was in danger, and had said nothing. She'd let him walk around, ignorant, believing they were safe. A young officer entered the room. "Detective, we found something." He held up a phone. It was taped under the coffee table in the nursery. Not Mr. Reynolds's or Ms. Mitchell's. Someone planted it there, probably to monitor them. Detective Johnson's expression darkened. "They've been watching, planning this." He turned to Marcus. "Mr. Reynolds, I need to know. How far are you willing to go to get Emma back?" "As far as it takes," Marcus said without hesitation. "Whatever it costs, whatever I have to do, she's my daughter." "Even though you're not biologically related," the detective pressed. "Even though Sarah lied to you." Marcus met his eyes steadily. "Biology doesn't make a father. Love does. Emma is mine. I've changed her diapers, walked her through the night when she couldn't sleep, sang her lullabies. I've been there for every smile, every milestone. The Torinos may have contributed DNA, but they're not her family. I am. Detective Johnson nodded slowly. Then I'm going to tell you something off the record. The Torino family is powerful, but they're not untouchable. We've been trying to build a case against them for years. If we can prove they kidnapped Emma, it might be the break we need, but it's going to be dangerous. They'll have Emma somewhere secure, probably surrounded by armed guards. A raid could go wrong in 100 different ways. What's the alternative? Marcus demanded. Negotiation, Sarah said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. I know these people. I know how they think. They want Emma, but they're not monsters. They believe they're rescuing Michael's daughter from a life of lies. If we approach them the right way, if I go to them and explain, absolutely not, Marcus cut her off. You're not going anywhere near them. It's the only way to keep Emma safe, Sarah insisted. If the police raid their compound, Emma could be caught in the crossfire. But if I go to them, if I negotiate, maybe I can convince them to let her go. Or at least to set up a meeting where we can talk about shared custody, some kind of arrangement. That's insane, Marcus said flatly. They'll kill you. Maybe, Sarah acknowledged. But Emma's life is worth more than mine. This is my fault. I brought this danger to her. Let me fix it. Detective Johnson held up a hand. Nobody's making any decisions tonight. We have people working the case, following leads. Sarah, we'll need you to write down everything you know about the Torino family, their properties, their associates, their routines. Mr. Reynolds, I'd suggest you increase security here and at your office. Until we recover Emma, you're potentially a target too. As the police finally left, the sun was rising over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Marcus stood at the broken nursery window, looking at the city below. Somewhere out there, Emma was crying for him, wondering why he hadn't come to get her. The thought was unbearable. Sarah appeared beside him. I'm sorry, she said simply, for everything, for lying, for putting Emma in danger, for all of it. If I could go back and do things differently. But you can't, Marcus interrupted. His voice was cold, emotionless. We can't change the past. All we can do is focus on getting Emma back safely. After that, he trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. After that, I'll leave, Sarah said. I'll disappear from both your lives. It's what I deserve. Marcus was about to respond when his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered it immediately. Hello? Marcus Reynolds? A woman's voice, cultured and calm. My name is Sophia Torino. I believe you have something of mine. Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. You have my daughter. No, Mr. Reynolds. You have my granddaughter. A granddaughter I wasn't aware existed until recently. I'm sure you can understand my shock at discovering Michael had a child, and that child was being kept from me. Emma is safe and loved, Marcus said, fighting to keep his voice steady. Whatever you think you're doing, you're wrong. She belongs with me. Sophia's laugh was soft and sad. I'm sure you believe that. And perhaps you do love her in your way. But she's a Torino, Mr. Reynolds. She has a family, a heritage, a destiny. You cannot give her that. I can give her something better, Marcus countered. A normal life, safety, love without conditions. There was a pause. You're not wrong about my world being dangerous, Sophia admitted. But it's also one of loyalty, strength and belonging. Emma will want for nothing. She'll be educated, protected, cherished, and she'll know who she really is. Let me see her, Marcus said desperately. Please, just let me see that she's okay. Another pause, longer this time, finally. I'll consider it, but understand, Mr. Reynolds, Emma is staying with us. The question is whether you'll fight this and make things ugly, or whether we can come to some kind of understanding. I'll call you again in 24 hours. Think carefully about what you want. The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone, his hands shaking. Beside him, Sarah had tears streaming down her face. What did she say? She wants to negotiate, Marcus said. He turned to Sarah, and for the first time, he saw her clearly. Not as the vulnerable girl he'd saved, not as the manipulator who'd used him, but as a desperate mother who'd made terrible choices trying to protect her child. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need the complete truth. No more lies, no more manipulation. Is there any possibility at all, that Emma might be mine? Sarah's eyes widened. What? No. Marcus, we never. I know that, Marcus said impatiently, but you said David wasn't the father. You said it was Michael Torino. But what if you're wrong? What if there's another possibility you haven't considered? Sarah shook her head firmly. There's no way. The timeline doesn't work. I met you for the first time the night Emma was born. But even as she said it, doubt flickered across her face, and Marcus saw it. What? He pressed. What are you thinking? It's nothing, Sarah said quickly. Just Michael and I, we were only together a few times. And the dates, I'm not entirely sure about the conception date. What if? She stopped, looking stricken. Oh God. What if I've been wrong this whole time? What if Emma isn't Michael's daughter at all? The DNA test kit arrived by courier at 8 a.m. sharp. Marcus had ordered it overnight from a private lab that promised complete discretion. Sarah sat across from him at the kitchen table, her face pale but determined. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked. I need to know, Marcus said simply. If Emma is biologically mine, it changes everything. The Torinos would have no legal claim. But how could she be yours? Sarah asked, genuinely confused. I've been thinking about that all night, Marcus interrupted. He pulled out a file folder and opened it. Inside were medical records, lab reports, documents that Sarah had never seen. When you came to the hospital that night, you were bleeding heavily. You needed a transfusion. Do you remember? Sarah nodded slowly. Dr. Patterson said it was touch and go. Without the transfusion, I might have died. I donated that blood, Marcus said. I'm a universal donor, and when the blood bank was running low on your type, I offered immediately. But there's more. During the C-section, there were complications. Dr. Patterson had to perform emergency procedures. You were unconscious for 3 hours afterward. I still don't understand what this has to do with... Marcus pulled out another document. This is a report from my fertility specialist. I saw him years ago, trying to figure out why my ex-wife and I couldn't conceive. It turns out I have an extremely rare genetic marker, something that appears in less than 0.01% of the population. It affects eye color, causes that distinctive gray shade that's almost pewter. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Emma's eyes. Emma's eyes, Marcus confirmed. The same shade as mine. The same rare genetic marker. Sarah, I need to know, is there any possibility that the hospital made a mistake? That somehow during all the chaos of that night, something happened that we're not aware of. Sarah stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. You're talking about a mix-up, like in vitro or artificial insemination. Marcus, I was in labor. They weren't doing fertility treatments. I'm not suggesting it was intentional, Marcus said carefully. But mistakes happen. Lab errors, specimen mix-ups. What if somehow in the chaos of saving your life and Emma's, something went wrong or right, depending on how you look at it? Before Sarah could respond, Marcus's phone rang. Detective Johnson. Mr. Reynolds, we've located the Torino compound. It's the estate in Lake Forest, heavily guarded. We've got eyes on it now and we can confirm Emma is there. We saw someone carrying an infant onto the grounds last night. Is she okay? Marcus demanded. From what we can see, yes. But Mr. Reynolds, we've also picked up some disturbing intelligence. The Torinos are planning something for tonight, some kind of family gathering or ceremony. Our informant suggests they're going to formally introduce Emma to the extended family, essentially claiming her as one of them. Once that happens, getting her back becomes exponentially more difficult. They'll dig in, hire lawyers, turn it into a media circus. Then we need to act before tonight, Marcus said. I was hoping you'd say that. But we need probable cause for a raid. And right now, Sarah's testimony alone isn't enough. Their lawyers will claim she willingly left Emma with them, that it's a family matter. We need something concrete. Marcus looked at the DNA test kit on the table. What if I can prove Emma isn't biologically related to the Torinos? Would that be enough? It would certainly help. But Mr. Reynolds, those tests take days to process. Not if you know the right people, Marcus said. He owned 3 hospitals with state-of-the-art laboratories. He could have results in hours if he pushed hard enough. "Give me until 2 p.m. I'll have proof." After hanging up, Marcus swabbed the inside of his cheek, then carefully labeled the sample. He'd kept one of Emma's pacifiers, something she'd used just the night before the kidnapping. It still had her saliva on it. Not ideal for testing, but it would work. "Marcus," Sarah said softly, "what if the test shows you're not her father? What if she really is Michael's daughter?" Marcus met her eyes. "Then I'll fight for her anyway. Biology or not, Emma is mine. But if I am her biological father, the law is on my side. The Torinos have no claim. That's our best chance of getting her back safely." He called his head of laboratory services at Reynolds Medical Center. "Doctor Chen, I need a favor. A big one. I need a paternity test run, results by 2 p.m. today. I know it's irregular, but this is an emergency." He explained the situation, carefully editing out the criminal elements. Dr. Chen, who had worked for Marcus for 15 years, didn't hesitate. "Bring the samples to the lab. I'll handle it personally." While Marcus was gone, Sarah sat alone in the penthouse, her mind racing. Could it be possible? Could Emma really be Marcus's daughter? The timing was impossible unless... She pulled out her phone and called her former doctor, the one she'd seen during her pregnancy before everything fell apart. "Dr. Morrison, this is Sarah Mitchell. I need to ask you about my pregnancy. The conception date you gave me, how accurate was it?" Dr. Morrison's voice was professional, but warm. "Sarah, those estimates can vary by up to 2 weeks in either direction. Why? Is something wrong?" 2 weeks. Sarah's mind reeled. She'd been with Michael right around the time Dr. Morrison had estimated conception, but if the doctor was off by even a week or 2, the timeline could shift. And if it shifted forward... But no, that still didn't make sense. She hadn't been with anyone else. Unless... A memory surfaced, hazy and unclear. The night she'd gone to Marcus's hospital before labor started. She'd been there hours earlier in the afternoon complaining of pain. The ER had been packed, and she'd waited 4 hours to be seen. During that time, she'd been given medications, undergone tests. She'd been so panicked and in so much pain that much of it was a blur. What if something had happened then? What if there'd been some kind of medical procedure, something she hadn't been fully aware of or couldn't remember? It seemed insane, like something out of a science fiction movie, but the alternative, that Emma just happened to have the same rare genetic marker as Marcus purely by coincidence, seemed equally impossible. Marcus returned at 1:45 p.m., his face unreadable. "Dr. Chen is rushing the final analysis. We should have results any minute." They sat in tense silence, the clock ticking loudly in the quiet apartment. At exactly 2:03 p.m., Marcus's phone rang. "Marcus, it's Dr. Chen. I've run the test 3 times to be absolutely certain. The results are..." "Remarkable. Mr. Reynolds, according to the DNA analysis, there is a 99% probability that you are Emma's biological father." The phone nearly slipped from Marcus's hand. "That's impossible." "The science doesn't lie," Dr. Chen said. "I don't know how or why, but that baby is yours. Congratulations." Marcus ended the call and looked at Sarah, who had tears streaming down her face. "I heard," she whispered. "Marcus, I swear to you, I have no idea how this happened. I never cheated on David with you. We never even met before that night. This doesn't make any sense." "No," Marcus agreed, "it doesn't. But right now I don't care about the how or why. What matters is that Emma is legally, biologically mine, and I'm going to get her back." He immediately called Detective Johnson. "I have proof. Emma is my biological daughter. Whatever you need to do, do it. I want my daughter home tonight." Detective Johnson's voice was energized. "This changes everything. With DNA proof that you're the biological father, and evidence that Sarah was coerced or threatened by the Torinos, we have probable cause for immediate action. I'm assembling a team now. But Mr. Reynolds, these situations can be unpredictable. I need you to stay at the penthouse where it's safe." "No," Marcus said flatly. "I'm coming with you." "Mr. Reynolds, Detective, that's my daughter in there. If there's any chance she might be scared or hurt, she needs to see my face. She needs to know I came for her. I'm coming with you, And that's not negotiable. There was a long pause, finally. Against my better judgment, okay. But you stay in the vehicle until we've secured the premises. Understood? Understood. The next 3 hours were a blur of preparation. Detective Johnson's team included FBI agents, given the interstate nature of the Torino organization. They planned the raid meticulously, studying blueprints of the estate, identifying entry points, preparing for various scenarios. Marcus watched it all with growing anxiety. These were professionals talking about flashbangs and tactical formations, and somewhere in the middle of it all was his 6-month-old daughter. At 6:15 p.m., as the sun began to set, they rolled out in a convoy of black SUVs. Sarah had begged to come, but Detective Johnson had been firm. She was too emotionally involved and potentially compromised. She would wait at the penthouse with a police guard. Marcus sat in the back of the lead vehicle, wearing a bulletproof vest that felt suffocatingly heavy, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest. The Torino estate appeared through the trees, a sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion surrounded by high walls. Guards were visible at the gate. "This is it," Detective Johnson said into his radio. "All units, go on my mark. 3, 2, 1, go." Everything happened at once. The gate crashed open as an armored vehicle rammed through. Agents swarmed the grounds, shouting commands. Marcus heard gunshots, though Detective Johnson quickly informed him they were flashbang grenades, not live fire. "Most of the guards are surrendering," he reported. "Smart. They know they're outgunned." Inside the mansion, Sophia Torino stood in a lavish nursery, Emma in her arms. She was a striking woman in her 60s, with silver hair elegantly styled and eyes that held both intelligence and sadness. When the agents burst in, weapons drawn, she didn't scream or try to run. She simply held Emma closer and said calmly, "There's no need for theatrics, the baby is fine." Marcus pushed past the agents and into the room. "Emma!" The baby's head turned at his voice, and her face lit up with recognition. She reached for him, making the little cooing sounds she always made when she wanted to be held. Without thinking, Marcus crossed to Sophia and held out his arms. Sophia looked at him for a long moment, then at Emma, who was now crying and straining toward Marcus with unmistakable urgency. Something in Sophia's expression cracked. "She knows you," she said softly. "She loves you." "I love her too," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "Please, she's my daughter. No," Sophia said, but there was less certainty in her voice. "She's my Michael's daughter. She's all I have left of him." "I have proof," Marcus said gently. "DNA evidence. Emma is my biological daughter, not Michael's. I don't know how or why Sarah thought otherwise, but the science is clear. Emma is mine." Sophia's face went white. "That's impossible. Sarah told me—" She stopped, and understanding dawned in her eyes. "She lied. She lied about Michael being the father to protect herself from David, and then she lied to me to make me think Emma was family." Her hands tightened on Emma, and for a moment Marcus feared she wouldn't let go. But then slowly she held the baby out to him. "If she's yours, then I have no right to her. But Mr. Reynolds, I want you to know, in the day I've had her, I've loved her. I've cared for her as my own. Please don't think I meant her any harm." Marcus took Emma into his arms, and the world suddenly felt right again. The baby immediately stopped crying, nuzzling against his chest with a contented sigh. "I believe you," he told Sophia. "I believe you thought you were doing the right thing. But she belongs with me. She always has." The aftermath of Emma's rescue was almost as chaotic as the kidnapping itself. Sophia Torino was arrested, along with 3 of her associates who had participated in the abduction, but her lawyers were already working on a plea deal, arguing that she genuinely believed Emma was her granddaughter and had acted to protect family. The prosecution was inclined to be lenient, given the unusual circumstances, especially since Emma had not been harmed. Back at the penthouse, Marcus refused to let Emma out of his sight. He held her while giving statements to the police, held her while reviewing legal documents, held her through the night when he finally tried to sleep. Sarah watched from a distance, her expression unreadable. The DNA results had shaken her almost as much as the kidnapping. She still couldn't explain how Marcus had become Emma's biological father, and the mystery hung over them like a cloud. 3 days after Emma's return, Dr. Patricia Patterson requested a meeting with both Marcus and Sarah. They met in her office at Reynolds Medical Center, Emma sleeping peacefully in Marcus's arms. Dr. Patterson looked uncomfortable, which immediately put Marcus on edge. She was normally unflappable. "I need to tell you something," she began. "Something that happened the night Emma was born. I've been reviewing the records, and I found an anomaly that I'd initially dismissed but now seems significant given the DNA results." She pulled out a thick medical file. "Sarah, when you arrived at the hospital, you were in critical condition. The baby was in distress and you were hemorrhaging. We had to make split-second decisions to save you both." "I remember you telling me it was close," Sarah said. "What I didn't mention at the time, because it seemed unnecessary and potentially confusing, was that we had to perform an emergency procedure called an intrauterine transfusion. Emma was severely anemic due to the complications. We had to give her blood directly while she was still in the womb, before we could safely deliver her via C-section." Marcus's arms tightened around Emma. "What are you saying?" Dr. Patterson took a deep breath. "The blood we used for that transfusion came from Marcus. He donated earlier that evening for Sarah's transfusion, and we had extra units typed and ready. In the chaos, with seconds to spare, we made the call to use his blood for the baby as well. It was a match, and it saved Emma's life." "But blood transfusions don't change DNA," Sarah said, confused. "No, they don't," Dr. Patterson agreed. "But I've been researching, and I found something extraordinary. There's a phenomenon called microchimerism, where cells from one individual can persist in another individual's body. It's most common between mothers and children, but it can occur in other situations too, including blood transfusions." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "Keep going." "The thing is," Dr. Patterson continued carefully, "in extremely rare cases, when a fetus receives blood from a donor during a critical developmental period, something unusual can happen. The donor's cells can integrate more deeply than normal. In Emma's case, she received Marcus's blood at a crucial moment when her own cells were compromised, and her body was desperate for survival. Those cells didn't just temporarily support her, they may have integrated into her developing system." "So, Emma has Marcus's blood cells in her body?" Sarah asked. "More than that, Doctor." Patterson said quietly, "I ran additional tests on the samples Dr. Chen used for the paternity test. What I found suggests that Emma's DNA now shows markers consistent with both you, Sarah, as her biological mother, and Marcus as her biological father. It's as if the transfusion, combined with the extreme circumstances of her birth, caused a genetic chimera situation. Part of her is you, Sarah, but part of her is also Marcus." The room was silent for a long moment. "That's impossible," Marcus finally said. "That's science fiction." "It should be impossible," Dr. Patterson agreed. "But the evidence is right here. I've consulted with geneticists at 3 different universities, and while they're all shocked, they all confirm the same thing. Somehow, through a combination of factors we're only beginning to understand, Emma has become genetically both of yours. She's a miracle, Mr. Reynolds, a 1 in a billion occurrence." Sarah's tears had started again. "So she really is your daughter," she whispered to Marcus. "Not because I lied or manipulated anyone, not because of some mistake, because you saved her life, and in saving her, you became her father in every possible way." Marcus looked down at Emma, who had woken and was staring up at him with those remarkable grey eyes that matched his own. He thought about the night they'd met, how holding her had changed everything. He'd thought it was just emotional attachment, just love. But maybe it had been something deeper, something cellular, something that science was only now catching up to understand. "There's more," Dr. Patterson said. "Because of the circumstances of Emma's birth and the genetic situation, there's going to be interest from the medical community. This is unprecedented. Researchers will want to study Emma, to understand how this happened. You'll need to be prepared for that attention." "No," Marcus said immediately. "Emma is not going to be a lab rat. She's not going to spend her childhood being poked and prodded by scientists." "I understand your concern," Dr. Patterson said, "but Mr. Reynolds, this discovery could change how we treat prenatal emergencies. It could save lives. I'm not saying Emma needs to be studied invasively, but allowing researchers access to her medical records, perhaps occasional non-invasive monitoring as she grows, could advance medical science significantly. Marcus looked at Sarah. What do you think? Sarah wiped her eyes. I think Dr. Patterson is right. If Emma's existence can help other babies, other mothers, then we have a responsibility to share what we know, but only in ways that don't harm her or make her feel like a specimen. She deserves a normal childhood, as normal as possible. Agreed, Marcus said. He looked back at Dr. Patterson. We'll cooperate with research, but on our terms. Emma's well-being comes first, always. Dr. Patterson nodded. I wouldn't expect anything else. She hesitated, then added, There's one more thing you should know. The microchimerism effect might have other implications, as we don't fully understand. Emma might have some of Marcus's genetic predispositions, his traits. She might be more like him than a typical adopted child would be. In a very real sense, she's gotten a second chance at being his biological daughter. After leaving Dr. Patterson's office, Marcus and Sarah walked through the hospital corridors in silence. Emma had fallen back asleep, her small hand curled around Marcus's finger. Finally, Sarah spoke. I need to tell you something. I've been offered a job in Portland. A fresh start, away from Chicago and all the memories here. I think I should take it. Marcus stopped walking. What about Emma? Emma belongs with you, Sarah said simply. I can see that now. I'm her biological mother, yes, but you're her real parent. You're the one she reaches for, the one she trusts, the one who fought heaven and earth to get her back. I love her, Marcus, but the best thing I can do for her is to let her grow up with someone stable, someone who can give her the life she deserves. You're her mother, Marcus protested, but even as he said it, he knew Sarah was right. Emma's bond with him was undeniable. Sarah had never developed that same connection, perhaps because of her guilt, perhaps because of the circumstances of Emma's birth, perhaps because on some cellular level, Emma had always known who her real father was. I'll visit, Sarah said. We can work out an arrangement. But day to day, Emma should be with you. And honestly, I need time to figure out who I am without all the lies and manipulation. I need to become someone Emma can be proud of someday. Marcus wanted to argue, but he also understood. Sarah had been through trauma, had made terrible choices, but she was trying to do the right thing now. Okay, he said finally. But Sarah, you're always welcome here, always. Emma will know who you are, and that you loved her enough to let her have the life she needed. Sarah hugged him then, carefully so as not to wake the baby between them. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. For saving my life, for loving Emma, for being a better person than I ever deserved. 2 weeks later, Sarah left for Portland. She'd signed custody papers, giving Marcus full parental rights, with visitation privileges that she could exercise whenever she wanted. The legal situation was complex, given Emma's unusual genetic status, but Marcus's lawyers were confident that no court would separate Emma from the man who was, by every definition that mattered, her father. 1 year later, Marcus stood in the same nursery where Emma had been taken, though it looked completely different now. The broken window had been replaced with unbreakable glass. New security systems monitored every corner of the penthouse, but more importantly, the room was filled with life and joy. Emma, now 18 months old, was pulling herself up on furniture, babbling in her own language and generally filling every moment with energy and curiosity. Dada, she squealed when she saw Marcus, her favorite word. He scooped her up, marveling as he did every day at how much she'd grown. She looked like him more and more as time passed, the same grey eyes, the same determined set to her jaw, even the same habit of wrinkling her nose when she was thinking hard about something. The doorbell rang and Marcus answered it with Emma on his hip. Sarah stood there looking healthier and happier than he'd seen her in months. She'd been in therapy, was working at a women's shelter in Portland, and had found purpose in helping others escape situations like the one she'd been in. She visited once a month, and each time, Marcus could see her growing into the person she'd always had the potential to be. "Hi, sweetheart," Sarah said to Emma, who smiled but stayed contentedly in Marcus's arms. Sarah no longer looked hurt by this. She'd accepted her role in Emma's life. Not the primary parent, but a caring presence who would always be there when needed. They spent the afternoon together, the three of them, playing with Emma and talking about Sarah's work. She told them about a young pregnant woman she'd helped just last week, someone in a similar situation to what Sarah had faced. "I told her about you," Sarah said to Marcus, "about how one person's kindness can change everything. She cried and said she wished there were more people like you in the world." "There are," Marcus said. "We just have to look for them, and sometimes we have to be them." After Sarah left, Marcus gave Emma her bath and put her in her pajamas. As he rocked her to sleep, singing the lullaby he'd sung since the first night he'd held her, he thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The coincidences, the miracles, the science that defied explanation, all of it had led to Emma being his daughter in the most complete and literal sense possible. Dr. Patterson had been right. Researchers were fascinated by Emma's case. Papers were being written, theories developed. But for Marcus, the explanation didn't matter. Whether through divine intervention, scientific anomaly, or simply the universe correcting itself, Emma was his daughter. His DNA flowed through her veins. His blood had saved her life, and in doing so, had made her his in a way that transcended normal biology. "You know what I think?" he whispered to the drowsy baby in his arms. "I think you were always meant to be mine. Maybe Sarah didn't know it when she walked into my hospital. Maybe I didn't know it when I first held you. But on some level, deeper than conscious thought, we knew. You knew. And the universe found a way to make it true." Emma yawned, her tiny hand clutching his shirt. Within minutes she was asleep, her breathing soft and even. Marcus held her a little longer than necessary, as he did every night, grateful for the miracle sleeping in his arms. His phone buzzed quietly. A text from Detective Johnson. "Just wanted to let you know Sophia Torino's case was settled today. She pled guilty to kidnapping, but got a suspended sentence plus community service. Her lawyer argued successfully that she believed she was rescuing her granddaughter. She also donated $500,000 to a children's hospital in Emma's name. She asked me to tell you she hopes Emma has a wonderful life." Marcus typed back, "Thank you for letting me know. I hope she finds peace." He meant it. Sophia had been wrong, had broken the law, had put Emma in danger, but she'd also been a grieving mother who thought she'd found a piece of her lost son. Marcus understood grief, understood the lengths people would go to hold on to love. In another life, under different circumstances, he and Sophia might have been allies rather than adversaries. As Marcus finally laid Emma in her crib and turned on the nightlight that projected stars on her ceiling, he thought about all the people whose lives had intersected because of this one small person. Sarah, who had learned to choose truth over survival. Dr. Patterson, whose quick thinking had saved 2 lives and created a medical miracle. Detective Johnson, who had risked his career to help a desperate father. Even Sophia, who had been forced to confront the difference between what she wanted and what was right. And himself, Marcus Reynolds, the billionaire who thought he had everything but had been empty inside, until a desperate young woman stumbled into his hospital, carrying the daughter he didn't know he'd been waiting for. Emma hadn't just changed his life. She'd given him a purpose beyond wealth and success. She'd made him a father, the one role he'd wanted more than any other. "Sweet dreams, little miracle," Marcus whispered, kissing Emma's forehead. "Your daddy loves you more than all the stars in the sky." As he left the nursery, leaving the door cracked open so he could hear her if she needed him, Marcus felt a peace he'd never known before. His penthouse was no longer silent and empty. It was filled with the soft sounds of a child breathing, the promise of tomorrow's laughter, the weight of responsibility and joy that came with being someone's entire world. The next morning, Marcus was awakened not by an alarm but by the sound of Emma babbling to herself in her crib. He smiled, stretching, and went to get her. She grinned when she saw him, holding up her arms. "Dada." "That's right, sweetheart. I'm your Dada, forever and always." As he changed her diaper and got her dressed for the day, Marcus's phone rang. An unknown number, which usually meant spam, but something made him answer. "Hello? Mr. Reynolds? My name is Jennifer Hart. I'm a reporter for the Chicago Tribune. I've been researching your story with Emma, and I'd like to write an article about it, about how you saved her life and became her father through medical miracle. I think people need to hear stories of hope like this." Marcus's first instinct was to say no, to protect Emma's privacy. But then he thought about what Sarah had said, about how his story had given hope to a desperate woman she'd met. He thought about Dr. Patterson's research that could help other babies. He thought about all the people out there who felt alone, who thought miracles didn't happen anymore. "Okay," he said, "but on one condition. The focus isn't on me. It's on Emma and the doctors who saved her. It's about the incredible things that can happen when people choose compassion over indifference, when they fight for what matters instead of what's easy." "I can do that," Jennifer said. "Mr. Reynolds, one more question. If you could tell people one thing about your experience, what would it be?" Marcus looked at Emma, who was playing with a stuffed elephant, completely unaware that she was the center of such an extraordinary story. "I'd tell them that family isn't always about blood, but sometimes, miraculously, it can be both. I'd tell them that love has power we're only beginning to understand. And I'd tell them that the most important moments in life often arrive when we least expect them, carried by people we've never met, in circumstances that seem impossible. Stay open to miracles. They're real." After the call ended, Marcus took Emma to the kitchen for breakfast. As she sat in her high chair, messily eating banana slices and giggling at absolutely nothing, Marcus realized that his life had become exactly what he'd always dreamed of, not because he'd planned it or earned it or purchased it, but because he'd been willing to help a stranger in desperate need. And in saving Sarah and Emma that night, he'd saved himself too. From loneliness, from emptiness, from a life that had everything except what mattered most. Emma had given him purpose, joy, and a love that transcended every boundary science claimed was absolute. Years from now, when Emma was old enough to understand, he would tell her the whole story. About the night a scared young woman came to his hospital, about the moment he first held her and felt his world shift, about the blood transfusion that had made her his daughter in ways no one could have predicted. He would tell her about Sarah's courage in letting her go, about Sophia's grief-driven mistake, about the community of people who had fought to keep their family together. But most of all, he would tell her that she was loved. Impossibly, miraculously, scientifically, inexplicably loved from the very first moment. And that she had taught him the greatest lesson of his life, that the best things don't come from boardrooms or bank accounts. They come from being brave enough to open your heart when someone needs you, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it changes everything. Emma looked up at him, banana smeared across her face, and laughed that pure, joyful laugh that only children can manage. "Dada," she said again, reaching for him with sticky hands. "Yes, baby girl," Marcus said, pulling her close despite the mess. "I'm your Dada, today, tomorrow, and forever. You're my miracle, my daughter, my everything. And nothing in this world will ever change that." The end.